Here's an interview I did with Dr. Jesse Morse talking about Zeke Elliott. Do we trust him in 2021? I'm going to tell you what I think. In a nutshell, I like Zeke Elliott in one or two leagues of a handful. If you've got one league, I don't know that I put everything on the line with Zeke. I'm going to tell you right up front, Zeke is a worry for me if I don't have Tony Pollard. If I have Tony Pollard, I'm pretty willing to invest in him in at least one or two leagues of my, dozen that I do. Here we go.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.
Top 5 running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show. Smitty! Take a lap. Tell me what you think about Zeke Elliott heading into 2021. Let's kick it off with Zeke and tell me what your concerns are. Tell me what you're not concerned about. I'm going to tell you right up front, Zeke is a worry for me if I don't have Tony Pollard. If I have Tony Pollard, I'm pretty willing to invest in him in at least one or two leagues of my, dozen that I do. Actually, last year I had 22 leagues, I think. But I definitely am worried. I felt like I saw a decline potentially. He's got a lot of mileage, but then again, I'm willing to take that chance in one or two leagues if I have Pollard because Pollard's such a good backup. What are you thinking with Zeke, and can you alleviate some of our concerns or maybe make things worse?
So Zeke has been unbelievably reliable. We saw a little bit of a decline last year, but I think there were multiple factors in that. I'm excited to talk about football again.
Yeah.
I'm in baseball mode.
Yeah.
I've been seeing a lot of patients recently, and I'm just excited to talk about a lot of these football guys. It's Memorial Day today, and now we're going to start ramping up over the next couple of months until we're finally ready to kick off week one. Now, for Zeke, he was pretty much a shoe-in top 5 back for the past couple of years, right?
Yep.
We know he had that suspension a couple years ago, but besides that, he really hasn't missed any games with injuries. He's been really healthy. Now, I think his issues in 2020 were multifactorial. One of them was Dak and his crazy injury. I think that definitely changes how the offense rolls. The other part of it is their offensive line was so banged up that it's hard to. It was like a mash unit. They didn't really have their strong offensive line, and they have an elite line when they're all healthy together. So you had a mishmash line the whole year, and I think that's very challenging for someone who's used to having an elite line, and then all of a sudden he has random guys popping in because each one of them is injured in some capacity. He still had a solid season, but for Zeke's standards, he wasn't himself. So is there a decline, or is it just some of these other factors? And once those factors are resolved, we can go back to the Zeke that we were hoping for. And I think the only really injury concern that he had was a calf strain. And he powered through one game, didn't do a whole lot, and ended up missing week, I think it was 14, and he came back in 15, or he missed 15. He missed 1 week, basically, or 1.5 games, essentially. But he still had a very, very solid season. He rushed for almost 1,000 yards. He caught 50 passes. Pollard was there in some capacity. And I'm curious to see how they use him this year. Dak will be back. That's a separate topic for a separate discussion, and I have my concerns there. But I think realistically, if you got 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, 60 catches, 400 yards, and another 2 receiving touchdowns, would you be happy with that from Zeke in 2021?
Yeah. I guess my concern, though, we're talking about, potential injury. Maybe he isn't a huge red flag for something specific, but breakdown, like you look at how many carries and the usage is through the roof. There aren't very many relevant players with his usage left in the NFL, like doing good things. What makes him What makes him most likely to like have one more good elite season when statistically a decline's probably like in the cards here? Like, what do you think? Is it just physical ability? The fact that, you know, he's proven to be a little bit more durable than the average back. So you're like, okay, we're going to give him one more year.
Yeah. I mean, I think that he's a little bit of a different breed. Him, Derrick Henry are just different backs. They're both, I mean, Henry's just a whole other planet, but they're both been relatively injury-free their whole career. Each of them have had a little bit of injuries, but overall, I'm not really worried about Zeke in 2021 for injuries. I mean, yeah, he had an individual injury, but even then, that should have cost him 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks. He missed a week. I mean, he's still pretty young. You know, I mean, overall, he's playing in his age 26 season in 2021. He's missed a total of 2 games in the past 3 years. And yeah, he did drop from 4.7 yards per carry in 2018 to 4.5 in 2019 to 4.0, you know, heading in the wrong direction. But is that more of an anomaly? I think so. I don't think he'll ever be the 5.1 yard per carry we saw in his rookie season, but I would be happy with a 4.5 or 4.6. And I think when you have Dak back, who is stretching the field and can do some crazy things that most other quarterbacks can't, that's going to open up lanes for Zeke that weren't open at the end of last year because Dak wasn't there.
And again, I'm all in 1 or 2 leagues. Like, I'm not calling him a bust candidate, really. I'm just being cautious around draft value and draft capital that I feel like could be safer. So, example, we're in a Dynasty league. I'm taking Justin Jefferson myself. Personally, I'm taking Justin Jefferson in the first round in 2021. Dynasty startups. I think he's potentially the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football from 2022 on. That's where I'm going in terms of, like, you know, in terms of Dynasty. And redraft, though, it's very different. I'm willing to take a gamble on Zeke at the 8, 9, 10 overall range. Would I take Taylor over him? Absolutely. Would I maybe take a couple wide receivers and go wide receiver running back or wide receiver? Probably would in some cases. But if Pollard wasn't there, I don't know how confident I would be, given that he got, and again, I think you're right. I think Dak coming back is going to be the answer, but it's still worrisome to see him run for 979, 244 totes on 15 games. It's just still very, very alarming. And because he's at that line where he may drop off, it you know, you got to think, is it a sign of things to come?
Well, in Dynasty, I don't think he is someone I would target, but in redraft, there's probably only 5 backs I want over him, given cost. You know,
I don't see a drop off for Christian McCaffrey or for Henry in terms of watching film and saying, okay, I can kind of see what's happening here. These guys are electric, elite when they're on the field. Correct. There's injury concern kind of on the side of that. With Elliott, I feel like we may have seen it. We may have. I don't know yet. I don't feel like it's as bad as Gurley, where I was like, oh my God, this is clear as day. But I feel like there's that potential that he really, really could have shown a little sign, and we're going to look back and go,
and he lost his step, so to speak.
Right, but we'll see. It could be just like you said. He needed to get everything back. You know, the Dak being back is such a big part. Offensive line. It's easy to judge a player when, you know, they're hitting the freaking offensive line before they even like get a full grip of the ball. I don't know. I'm again 8-9. I'm okay with Zeke. The next guy, unless you have anything else to add on Zeke, the next guy is an interesting one in Antonio Gibson.
No, I mean, I really love the potential for the Cowboys offense. I like what Pollard can do. Cooper is underrated. Gallup should bounce back. Lamb could have a scary season. Jarwin should be back. I haven't heard any setbacks. And then Schultz had a solid season. So they have a lot of mouths to feed. I'm a little concerned about that. You know, it's not a two-man show like in New Orleans.
As I said, in a nutshell, I like Elliott in 1 or 2 leagues, but you have to own Tony Pollard. You have to. Pollard is a very good running back. In fact, my favorite running back to grab not even considering the starter, in the super handcuff range, which is what I've coined for about 4 or 5 running backs every year. Super handcuff meaning that if the starter goes down, the elite player, Cook, Elliott, Kamara, the player that goes in produces near the same stat lines, and that is Mattison, that is Tony Pollard. It used to be Lat Murray, might still be Mike Davis in 2020, maybe it will be Chuba Hubbard in 2021. But Pollard is a crafty, stand-alone, win-a-league player and an absolute must-own player for any Zeke Elliott owner in 2021. Like, if you draft Zeke and you don't draft Pollard, you should be ashamed of yourself.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.
Top 5 running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show.
Smitty!